Karen believed ruining my well-maintained yard was merely innocent behavior until she learned the consequences of antagonizing someone with electrical expertise who understands proper foundation depths. For 90 consecutive days, this presumptuous woman treated my property corner as her personal access route. Each dawn, her luxury white BMW X5 tore through my expensive Kentucky bluegrass installation as though she had ownership rights. The harsh noise of rubber destroying my watering systems filled the air. Exhaust fumes contaminated my peaceful morning routine. The sound of crushed hopes beneath premium automotive machinery echoed daily that I attempted reasonable conversation, but received threats in response. I erected warning notices, which she demolished. Law enforcement was contacted, but claimed it fell under civil jurisdiction. Karen remained unaware of my recent discovery regarding the actual location of my land boundaries versus her regular driving path. Following the strategic installation of one concrete barrier, her vehicle worth $80,000 became an expensive sculptural piece. She faced legal prosecution, marital dissolution documents, and social disgrace. However, these events merely introduce how this unstable individual demolished her existence. Share your thoughts below about handling someone who continuously damages your land. Include a flag symbol, and tell me your viewing location. Let me share the story of achieving the American dream that transformed into 3 months of torment. My name is Marcus Thompson, age 52, a union electrician who dedicated 3 decades to power system installation in various structures from retail centers to medical facilities. My expertise involved ensuring permanent placement of infrastructure. I specialized in concrete bases for utility poles, buried cable networks, and lasting installations capable of withstanding nature's harshest conditions. Following 30 years of extra shifts and seasonal compensation, I purchased my dream corner property in Millbrook Heights. My spouse Sarah, married to me for 26 years, was battling early Parkinson's disease. Her world was contracting progressively. Extended driving had become impossible. Her cherished gardening was no longer feasible. This lawn would serve as our refuge and healing space that I invested $3,000 in comprehensive landscaping. I chose premium Kentucky bluegrass seed, installed underground irrigation featuring electrical controls I personally wired, and added soil enrichment with a rich earth aroma. Daily, I would emerge with my morning beverage, enjoying the soft spray sounds and observing beauty emerging from bare ground. Then Karen Whitmore decided my land was her express lane. Imagine your most terrible homeowners association nightmare. Add German automotive luxury and multiply by someone unhinged. Karen was 48 with expensive hair coloring and an attitude capable of spoiling dairy products. She inhabited the neighborhood's largest oversized home resembling a casino merged with excessive suburbia, alongside her husband Derek, owner of Whitmore Construction. Derek's business had built approximately half the Millbrook Heights development. The amusing detail? Karen operated a white BMW X5 bearing vanity plates spelling her name because understatement seemed prohibited in her universe. Initially finding tire marks cutting through my immature grass, I assumed honest error. Deep grooves through barely established turf left behind torn soil scent and burnt rubber smell. The second morning brought identical tracks at the identical time. Day 3 prompted security camera installation. Success. Each morning precisely at 7:47, Karen would race around the corner, accelerate directly across my land avoiding a brief detour, then speed away as though late for royalty obligations. The recording was excellent quality, providing definitive proof of someone believing regulations didn't apply to them. I walked to her residence for civilized introduction. I explained I'd noticed her cutting through my property. She responded that the country was free and suggested I shouldn't plant near roadways if minor traffic bothered me. Never looking up from her flower cultivation, an MY electrician's mind began calculating structural support requirements. I clarified this was my land with survey markers present. She turned with a disturbing smile, asking if I was making threats. Noting her husband constructed the neighborhood, she held HOA board position, and I would soon learn local operations. She emphasized being extremely cautious about accusations. Her repetition of very twice sounded like physics explanation for young children. Returning home, my work footwear crunched gravel with each step resembling a timer. Sarah observed from the window with visible, trembling hand concern. That evening, I reviewed electrical regulation manuals and began research. 30 years installing lasting infrastructure had taught me something Karen clearly didn't comprehend. When you challenge someone specializing in creating absolutely permanent, immovable stability, you must ensure you're positioned on solid ground. I was preparing to demonstrate the distinction between temporary problems and lasting outcomes. Karen Whitmore would discover that physics prevails when you interfere with an electrician's retirement dream. 3 decades of electrical work taught me systematic problem resolution with accuracy and patience. That weekend, I executed my initial tactical response. At Tony's hardware establishment, I acquired low-voltage outdoor lights, motion detectors, and sufficient weather-resistant cable to illuminate a modest airfield. The familiar copper and plastic insulation scent reminded me of numerous job locations where I'd resolved larger challenges than one entitled neighbor. If Karen intended using my land as a racetrack, she would receive full theatrical treatment. Saturday and Sunday were spent installing what I privately termed the courtesy illumination system. 8 motion-triggered floodlights positioned every 6 feet along my boundary, activated by anything exceeding house cat size. Each connection was flawless, water-sealed, regulation-compliant, and engineered for 20-year longevity. Monday morning at 7:47 sharp, Karen's BMW screamed around the corner, triggered the first sensor, and suddenly 8,000 lumens of brilliant white light transformed her windshield into a miniature sun. Her brake screech surpassed my morning coffee enjoyment. She remained stationary for 30 seconds, likely seeing spots, then accelerated through anyway with roaring engine sounds. Tuesday brought identical light display, but this time she pressed her horn as though announcing the apocalypse. Wednesday, I added professional private property electronic monitoring signage where she couldn't miss it. That's when Karen initiated warfare. Thursday night, while watching late news, my security system began chirping alerts. There was Karen dressed entirely in black like a suburban covert operative, systematically kicking my landscape lights with toddler tantrum enthusiasm. Infrared recording captured everything beautifully. Her rage-twisted face, her designer footwear contacting $800 of equipment, even her realization moment that the recording indicator light blinked at her, and MY electrical expertise saved me here. I hadn't merely installed lights, but also a backup battery system learned from years working on hospital emergency lighting. When primary power gets severed, backup activates automatically. While Karen demolished my main lighting, secondary cameras continued recording every kick, every muttered profanity, every deliberate vandalism moment in high-definition excellence. Friday morning delivered an official HOA complaint in my mailbox regarding excessive lighting, neighborhood tranquility disruption, and safety hazard creation. Karen Whitmore, HOA treasurer, had signed it. The paper felt cheap between my fingers, like her reasoning that I contacted my insurance company to file vandalism claims, then called Tony. Tony responded enthusiastically, noting this woman had been accumulating adversaries like collectibles, with half the neighborhood complaining about her at his store. That afternoon, Tony introduced me to 78-year-old Mrs. Patterson, sharp as new wire strippers, who documented Karen's tyrannical reign for 2 years in a spiral notebook with professional engineering dedication. While Karen played midnight vandal, my insurance investigator arrived for damage assessment. These professionals don't simply examine broken lights, but scrutinize everything with building inspector thoroughness. When this investigator began measuring distances and checking boundaries with laser equipment, he paused at my corner markers, suggesting I might want professional surveying done, as these property markers appeared significantly incorrect. The metallic anticipation taste filled my mouth. Karen had just provided something bigger than a vandalism claim. She'd given me the key to her entire operation. That night, I researched concrete barriers with the same methodical approach I'd used for electrical installations throughout my career. Permanent solutions require permanent foundations. The insurance investigator's comment about incorrect property markers kept me awake all night. 3 decades of electrical work had drilled one rule into my consciousness. When a professional with precision instruments identifies something wrong, you absolutely must listen. Monday morning, I contacted Pete, my old union colleague who transitioned to commercial surveying after his back failed from excessive electrical conduit crawling. His gravelly voice and faint cigarette smoke through the phone revived memories of job sites where we learned property surveys are public records accessible to any homeowner for photocopying costs. Pete agreed to help with union discount pricing. Before Pete could arrive, I conducted detective work at the county clerk's office, which smelled of aged paper and industrial floor wax with fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. The same electrical hum I'd heard in every municipal building I'd ever wired. What I discovered in those dusty files made my hands shake with fury. The original survey from 2019 showed my boundary running 12 feet further east than current markers indicated. But the real evidence was an amended survey from 2020 signed by Derek Whitmore, licensed contractor, with a bureaucratic note about correcting measurement errors for municipal compliance. Correcting errors was nonsense. Derek had literally relocated my property line, giving his wife more driving room. Wednesday brought Pete and his crew with equipment, making my laser level appear like children's toys. The metallic click of their instruments and sharp spray paint scent reminded me of my own methodical electrical installation approach. Measure thrice, install once, document everything. Pete exclaimed I owned 18 feet more than those false markers showed. This entire corner where Karen liked racing, that had been my land the whole time. The surveyor's bright orange paint created new reality across my lawn. Karen's daily shortcut wasn't just crossing my property. She was driving across nearly 20 feet of land legally belonging to me. Every single morning for 3 months constituted criminal trespassing. Pete's next discovery made my electrician brain illuminate like a Christmas tree. He pointed toward Karen's decorative stonework retaining wall, noting the whole thing sat 4 feet onto my property. It probably cost $15,000 to build and had been illegal since day one. I felt the same electric satisfaction I'd experienced finally tracking down short circuits after hours of methodical testing. Every puzzle piece was clicking into place with perfect precision. That evening, Karen must have spotted the survey flags because she came clicking across my driveway in designer heels like a one-woman invasion force. The sharp stiletto sounds on concrete reminded me of hammers on metal, aggressive and impossible to ignore. She demanded explanation for the flags, claiming I couldn't magically move property lines because I was having a breakdown about normal neighborhood traffic. I produced Pete's official survey report, the heavy paper crackling with authority, explaining that according to this licensed surveyor, she'd been criminally trespassing on my property daily for 3 months. Additionally, her gorgeous retaining wall was also on my land. Her face cycled through more colors than a malfunctioning traffic signal. She insisted this was impossible, claiming Derek built this entire development and knew exactly where every boundary ran. I finished with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, noting that he absolutely did know. The original survey from 2019 showed these exact boundaries, while the mysteriously corrected version from 2020 had her husband's signature all over it. Instead of backing down, Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She called me stupid blue-collar trash, claiming I couldn't waltz into their neighborhood making demands. She and Derek owned this place and decided who belonged. People who caused them problems tended to find life gets very, very difficult. Her expensive perfume smell mixed with the metallic taste of pure fury in my mouth. This transcended property lines. This concerned power, class, and who got to decide the rules. After she stormed off poisoning the evening air with threats and entitlement, I made 2 phone calls. First, to my insurance company's legal department, who explained systematic property fraud often involved entire corruption networks. Second call was to a concrete contractor I'd worked with on commercial jobs, because some problems require permanent solutions. Karen's promise to make my life very difficult wasn't just a threat, but a preview of coming attractions. Friday morning, while savoring coffee and admiring my perfectly surveyed boundaries, a white city truck rumbled into my driveway like a municipal tank. Out stepped Dave Morrison, code enforcement officer with clipboard and dead-eyed expression of someone who'd abandoned justice. He claimed an anonymous complaint about unpermitted electrical installations creating safety hazards. The metallic taste of bureaucratic corruption replaced my morning beverage. I asked what installations he meant. Dave gestured toward my landscape lighting like identifying crime scene evidence, mentioning motion-activated floodlighting, underground wiring systems, potential commercial-grade equipment in residential zoning. Anonymous complaint. Indeed, I could practically smell Karen's vanilla perfume wafting off his clipboard. I explained these were standard low-voltage landscape lights, everything code-compliant, and I was a licensed union electrician. But Dave wasn't interested in facts. He pulled measuring tape and started documenting my installations with mechanical precision of someone following orders rather than regulations. He issued a $1,200 fine for unpermitted electrical work, giving 10 days to remove everything or face escalating penalties. My background saved me here. Decades of permit applications had taught me residential low-voltage lighting under 30 volts requires no permits in our municipality, a fact I triple-checked before installing the first fixture. But something about Dave's demeanor triggered my troubleshooting instincts. I asked where he golfed. His pen froze mid-signature. I mentioned a neighbor seeing him at Millbrook Country Club, beautiful course. The flush creeping up his neck was more revealing than any confession. Millbrook Country Club was Derek Whitmore's weekend headquarters where construction contracts got discussed over 18 holes and municipal favors got traded like baseball cards. After Dave departed with his fraudulent citation, I called my old foreman Big Jim, whose gravelly voice carried 40 years of municipal building department experience. Jim explained Dave Morrison had been struggling since his divorce, and word around the department was he'd been accommodating certain developers lately. Bills don't pay themselves. The corruption stench was getting thicker than summer asphalt. That afternoon, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all building complaints from the past 18 months. When the city clerk handed me photocopied papers smelling like toner and broken dreams, I understood Karen's operation's true scope. 47 complaints, all signed by Karen Whitmore, targeting 19 different neighbors for excessive garden decorations, unauthorized driveway modifications, suspicious property improvements, and paint color violations. The woman had weaponized municipal bureaucracy like a suburban dictator, and Dave Morrison had been her willing enforcer in at least 12 cases. Then I found the smoking gun that made my electrician brain illuminate like a Christmas tree. 3 months ago, Dave signed off on Derek's $1 million addition project. The same timeline when those property surveys got mysteriously corrected without requiring a single permit revision or inspection delay. A project normally requiring 6 months of bureaucratic red tape sailed through Dave's office in 3 weeks. The coincidence was more obvious than a short circuit in a thunderstorm that I called Tom Rodriguez, the city's head electrical inspector, a straight shooter I'd worked with on commercial projects for 15 years. He agreed to provide a second opinion on my residential lighting as professional courtesy. 30 minutes later, Tom stood in my yard with precision instruments, examining my installations with surgical thoroughness. His expression shifted from professional interest to barely contained outrage. He said this was museum quality work, better than 90% of commercial installations he inspected. He held up Dave's citation like contaminated material, noting whoever wrote this either failed electrical code certification or was deliberately lying. The plot twist that changed everything occurred while Tom was documenting Dave's fraudulent inspection. His radio crackled with an emergency call about a major electrical fire at Derek Whitmore's latest construction site, involving faulty wiring with no permits on file and potential criminal negligence. The irony was perfect enough to taste like victory. Tom's official report to the city that evening didn't just exonerate my installations, but triggered a full internal investigation into Dave Morrison's recent inspection decisions and his suspicious relationship with certain local developers. That night, I finalized my concrete barrier specifications with the same methodical precision I'd brought to electrical installations my entire career. Every measurement perfect, every regulation satisfied, every detail designed for permanent results. Karen was about to discover that some people build things that last forever. The professional survey results Pete delivered Monday morning didn't just confirm my suspicions, but blew the lid off a property theft operation that would make con artists weep with admiration. Pete told me to sit down, spreading blueprints across my kitchen table with the solemnity of a coroner delivering bad news. The papers crackled with official authority, and fresh ink smell mixed with my coffee created an oddly ceremonial atmosphere. The numbers were staggering. I didn't just own 8 or 12 feet more than those fake markers indicated. I owned 18 feet beyond what Karen thought was her territory. Her daily BMW shortcut crossed nearly 20 feet of my property, while her precious decorative retaining wall sat 4.5 feet onto my land. But here's where it gets beautiful. Karen's husband Derek hadn't just moved my property line. He'd systematically stolen land from 6 different homeowners over 4 years, creating a spiderweb of fraudulent surveys that netted his family an extra half-acre of prime real estate. Pete pointed to the overlay comparison, his finger-tracing differences between original and corrected surveys. Mrs. Patterson lost 12 feet of her backyard. The Hendersons lost 8 feet along their side lot. Even the new Garcia family got robbed of 15 feet before they'd finished unpacking. The metallic taste of pure rage filled my mouth. This wasn't just about my lawn anymore, but about a systematic theft operation disguised as clerical corrections. My electrical background had taught me something Derek apparently never learned. When you build on stolen ground, everything becomes unstable. I was about to introduce serious instability to Karen's perfect little world. 30 years of installing electrical foundations had given me expertise Derek never anticipated. I knew exactly how deep concrete barriers needed to go for maximum vehicle impact resistance. I understood load-bearing calculations, stress distribution, and most importantly, the precise placement that would turn a speeding BMW into abstract art. The legal consultation that afternoon confirmed what my gut already knew. Real estate attorney Sarah Kim examined Pete's survey with the intensity of a detective studying crime scene photos, the fluorescent lights in her office buzzing with familiar electrical hum. She explained I had grounds for a lawsuit that could bankrupt the Whitmores, systematic property fraud, municipal corruption, civil rights violations under color of authority. We were talking criminal charges and 7-figure damages. The sweet smell of victory was intoxicating, but I had a better idea. I asked what if I wanted to install a decorative concrete barrier on my property purely for aesthetic purposes. Sarah's smile was sharper than wire strippers, explaining decorative landscaping features are completely legal provided they're installed within property boundaries and meet municipal safety standards. That evening, I stood at my corner property line with a tape measure, calculating the exact spot where Karen's passenger side will track every morning at 7:47. The mathematics were beautiful in their simplicity. Physics plus precision equals permanent problem solving. My electrician's training had taught me the most elegant solutions often look deceptively simple. One decorative concrete barrier professionally installed according to commercial electrical pole standards positioned exactly where momentum and stupidity would intersect at 25 miles per hour. The foundation would go 5 feet deep with rebar reinforcement, the same specifications I'd used for electrical installations that needed to survive hurricanes. The barrier itself would be 42 inches of reinforced concrete with decorative cap, perfectly legal and absolutely immovable. Karen's illegal shortcut was about to become the most expensive driving lesson in municipal history. And the beautiful part? She was going to do it to herself. Some people plan revenge. I engineer permanent solutions. Tuesday morning, I drove to Industrial Concrete Supply with the same methodical approach I brought to every major electrical installation in my career. The warehouse smelled like cement, dust, and rebar, triggering memories of commercial jobs where foundations had to be absolutely perfect the first time that I told Miguel, the manager who'd supplied concrete for half my electrical pole installations, that I needed a decorative barrier for residential application, but I wanted commercial grade specifications. Miguel raised an eyebrow at my requirements. 42 inches tall, 8 inches diameter, reinforced core, decorative granite cap. He joked about stopping a tank. I simply said I wanted something that'll last. The taste of anticipation metallic on my tongue. The technical specifications were beautiful in their precision. Foundation depth 5 feet, extending below frost line for permanent stability. Rebar reinforcement with 4 half-inch steel bars running full height cross-braced every 18 inches. Quick set concrete with 4,000 psi compressive strength. The same standard I'd used for electrical installations needing to survive hurricane force winds. Wednesday brought legal team assembly. Real estate attorney Sarah Kim had connected me with a surveyor willing to testify about fraudulent boundary alterations, while my insurance company's investigator documented every piece of collected evidence. The conference room smelled like fresh coffee and expensive legal pads, but the atmosphere crackled with the electricity of impending justice. Sarah explained the beauty of this approach. Decorative landscaping elements are protected speech under municipal aesthetic regulations. As long as my barrier meets safety standards and stays within property boundaries, Karen can't touch it legally. But I wasn't just relying on legal protection. My electrical background had taught me backup systems prevent catastrophic failures. So I recruited a community network that would make Karen's retaliation attempts impossible. Mrs. Patterson had organized what she called the Millbrook Neighborhood Defense Committee, which sounded official enough to make HOA board members nervous. Tony's hardware store became our unofficial headquarters, where motor oil and metal shaving smell mixed with excitement of neighbors who'd finally found someone willing to fight back. Dave Henderson, whose backyard had been stolen 8 feet at a time, said if I could stop her, I had his full support. The Garcias, who'd lost 15 feet of their property before finishing unpacking, offered to document everything from their security cameras. Jim Martinez volunteered his landscaping crew to help with installation. Even the mailman, who'd been harassed by Karen for walking on her grass, promised to keep watch during daily rounds. Thursday afternoon brought precision installation planning that separated professional work from amateur attempts. Using a laser transit I'd borrowed from Pete's surveying company, I marked the exact spot where Karen's passenger will cross my property line every morning. The calculations were poetry and mathematics. Vehicle speed, impact angle, center of gravity shift, and precise positioning that would maximize both damage and legal protection. The barrier would sit 8 inches inside my confirmed property boundary, position where physics and stupidity would intersect at exactly 7:47. My electrical training had taught me proper grounding prevents system failures, and this barrier would be grounded so thoroughly that nothing short of dynamite could move it. Friday morning, Miguel's crew arrived with the concrete mixer that sounded like a mechanical dragon breathing life into my plans. The sweet chemical smell of quickset concrete mixing with water reminded me of every foundation I'd ever poured for electrical installations needing to last decades. The excavation went 5 feet down, revealing dark soil that would cradle my revenge for the next century. For pieces of half-inch rebar formed a steel skeleton that could stop a freight train, while the concrete mixture achieved the consistency of liquid stone. Miguel observed this thing would be here when my great-grandkids were old, watching his crew pour the foundation with professional pride. The barrier itself was a masterpiece of functional art. Reinforced concrete core, decorative granite cap, and a small bronze plaque reading Maple Grove Memorial Garden, established 2024. To any casual observer, it looked like a thoughtful landscaping accent. To Karen's BMW, it would look like the hand of God. While the concrete cured over the weekend, I repositioned security cameras for optimal impact documentation and placed attorney Sarah Kim's business card on speed dial. Every detail had been planned with the same obsessive precision I'd brought to electrical installations where lives depended on getting it right. Monday morning, Karen would discover that some problems require permanent solutions, and some electricians know exactly how to make things stick. That Karen's vacation to Palm Beach ended Monday morning at exactly 7:47, marked by the familiar sound of her BMW engine revving with its usual entitled aggression. What she didn't expect was the decorative landscape feature that had sprouted in her absence like a concrete mushroom of justice. I was positioned at my kitchen window with fresh coffee and a front row seat to physics in action. The steam from my mug mixed with the crisp morning air as Karen's white BMW came screaming around the corner at her usual 25 miles per hour, following the exact trajectory she'd carved through my property for 3 months. The moment of impact was everything I calculated and more. Karen's passenger side wheel clipped my barrier at precisely the angle I'd engineered, creating a symphony of destruction that echoed off every house in the neighborhood. The metallic screech of rim against concrete, the explosive pop of tire meeting a movable object, the satisfying crunch of German engineering discovering American mathematics. Her BMW lurched sideways like a wounded animal, suspension components singing their death song as the wheel well crumpled against my perfectly positioned monument to property rights. Steam hissed from her radiator like an angry dragon, while her hazard lights blinked frantically in automotive distress. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hiss of escaping coolant and Karen's voice rising in a crescendo of rage that would have impressed opera singers. Demanding to know what that thing was that I stepped onto my front porch with the casual satisfaction of someone whose morning coffee had just gotten significantly better, greeting her and explaining it was a decorative garden feature I installed while she was away. Karen emerged from her disabled BMW like a fury rising from the underworld, her designer vacation outfit contrasting beautifully with the smell of antifreeze and burnt rubber. She accused me of doing this on purpose and setting a trap that I calmly explained the barrier was 8 inches inside my property line, professionally installed according to municipal standards, holding up Pete's survey documentation like a shield made of legal paper. I suggested perhaps she should consider using the public street instead of my private property. The transformation in Karen's face was spectacular, confusion shifting to understanding, understanding morphing into pure rage. She cursed me, claiming this would cost me everything. But here's where Karen made her first tactical error. Instead of calling her insurance company or a tow truck, she called the police, demanding they arrest me for setting booby traps and attempted vehicular assault. Officer Rodriguez arrived 20 minutes later, his patrol car's radio crackling with the background noise of municipal authority. The smell of hot asphalt and Karen's increasingly desperate perfume created an oddly festive atmosphere as he examined the scene with professional detachment. He observed this appeared to be a decorative landscape feature installed on private property, measuring the distance from barrier to property line with the same laser precision Pete had used for the survey. He asked if she had permission to drive on this gentleman's land. Karen's response was a masterpiece of entitled fury, claiming she didn't need permission because she'd been using this route for months and I couldn't just change the rules. Officer Rodriguez's expression shifted to the kind of patient exhaustion reserved for dealing with particularly dense criminals, explaining that driving on private property without permission is criminal trespassing, and the property owner has every right to install landscape features within his boundaries. That's when Karen played her trump card, pulling out her phone to call Derek with the desperate energy of someone whose world was collapsing in real time, demanding he come down immediately because I had destroyed her car. But Derek's response, audible through the phone speaker, wasn't quite the cavalry charge Karen expected. He asked what she'd done now, mentioning he was in the middle of a code enforcement investigation and telling her to handle it herself. The color drained from Karen's face faster than coolant from a radiator. Derek hanging up on her in front of witnesses was more devastating than the actual car damage. Officer Rodriguez completed his report with the bureaucratic efficiency of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out countless times. No charges filed. Incident classified as driver error on private property. Insurance claim responsibility falling squarely on Karen's shoulders after the tow truck hauled away her wounded BMW, leaving only the lingering scent of defeat and expensive perfume. Karen stood in my driveway like a general surveying a lost battlefield, whispering that this wasn't over, her voice carrying the kind of quiet venom that promised escalation beyond anything we'd experienced so far. But I had something she didn't: a community of allies, legal documentation, and the kind of methodical planning that comes from 30 years of solving problems that have to work the first time. That evening, Mrs. Patterson organized an impromptu barrier appreciation party in my backyard, where the smell of barbecue and the sound of neighbors laughing created the exact opposite atmosphere of Karen's morning meltdown. The war was just beginning, but the first battle belonged to physics, precision, and the power of knowing exactly where your property lines and that Karen's promise that this wasn't over wasn't just a threat, but a declaration of total war. And like most desperate people backed into a corner, she was about to make the kind of mistakes that turn property disputes into felony charges. Wednesday afternoon, while I was replacing a sprinkler head damaged by Karen's automotive encounter with my barrier, Mrs. Patterson shuffled over with the urgency of someone carrying nuclear secrets, showing me a recording she'd made of Karen on the phone that morning. The video quality was grainy, but the audio was crystal clear. Karen pacing in her driveway like a caged animal, screaming into her phone with volume suggesting the person on the other end was either deaf or hiding, saying she didn't care what it cost, and wanted that thing gone by Friday, and wanted it to look like an accident. Mrs. Patterson scrolled to the next video, same day, different call. Karen's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that carried farther than her shouting, instructing someone to make it look like emergency utility work, gas leak, water main break, whatever, and she'd handle the paperwork with the city. The metallic taste of impending victory filled my mouth. Karen wasn't just planning vandalism, but orchestrating fraud on a municipal level. Thursday morning brought the first phase of Karen's master plan. A yellow excavator rumbled down Maple Grove Avenue, with the authority of legitimate construction equipment operated by someone who looked like he'd learned to drive heavy machinery in prison that I called the gas company first, asking if they had any emergency work scheduled in my area today. They confirmed nothing on the books for my street this week. Water department said no scheduled maintenance in Millbrook Heights. Electric company said all crews were working downtown. Strike 3. Karen's emergency utility work was about as legitimate as her property boundaries. That MY electrical background saved the day again. Years of coordinating with utility companies had taught me real emergency work requires permits, proper signage, and coordination with multiple departments. Fake emergency work just requires a desperate housewife with too much money and no common sense that I positioned myself at my front window with my phone ready to record as the excavator approached my barrier like a mechanical gladiator entering the arena. The operator clearly knew this wasn't legitimate work, his movements hesitant, constantly looking around like he expected sirens at any moment. Then Karen appeared, marching across my lawn in designer boots completely inappropriate for construction site supervision. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with her aggressive perfume created an oddly toxic atmosphere as she pointed at my barrier like a general ordering artillery strikes, instructing the operator to make it look like gas leak repair. That's when I called emergency services, reporting someone operating heavy machinery on my property without permission, claiming to be doing utility work that no utility company authorized. The police response was faster than Karen's BMW used to be. 2 patrol cars and a supervisor arrived just as the excavator's bucket made contact with my barrier, creating sparks that looked appropriately dramatic for the cameras now recording everything. Officer Martinez stepped out with the weary expression of someone who'd dealt with Karen before, asking if she had permits for this excavation work. Karen's attempt at innocent confusion was Oscar-worthy, claiming this was emergency utility repair and gas leak detection. When asked which utility company, the pause that followed was longer than Karen's usual attention span. She stammered that the city sent them. Officer Martinez pulled out his radio and made the calls I'd already made, confirming what we all knew. No utility work was scheduled, no permits had been issued, and no gas leaks existed anywhere near my property. But the beautiful part was yet to come. The excavator operator, faced with potential criminal charges, decided to save his own skin by producing his phone and playing the recording of Karen offering him $10,000 cash to accidentally damage my landscaping while making it look like legitimate utility work. Karen's voice crystal clear through his phone speaker. She didn't care if it was illegal. She wanted that concrete monstrosity gone, and she wanted the old man to pay for it. The click of handcuffs around Karen's wrist was more satisfying than the sound of her BMW meeting my barrier. Charges included fraud, conspiracy to commit vandalism, impersonating utility authority, criminal trespassing, and attempted bribery of a municipal contractor. The excavator operator, facing his own charges, revealed that Derek had been involved in the planning, providing fake utility company letterhead and municipal work orders. The conspiracy reached deeper than anyone had imagined. As Karen was loaded into the patrol car, her final words were directed at me through gritted teeth, claiming I had no idea what I'd started, calling me pathetic blue-collar garbage. But I knew exactly what I'd started. the systematic destruction of a criminal enterprise that had been terrorizing my neighborhood for years. That evening, local reporter Janet Williams knocked on my door with the hunger of someone who'd sensed a Pulitzer prize. In the making, the monthly city council meeting had never seen a crowd like this. Standing room only, 3 local TV stations with cameras rolling, and an atmosphere charged with the electricity of long-awaited justice. The municipal building's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as nearly 200 residents packed into a space designed for 50. Karen arrived 20 minutes late with a legal team that probably cost more than my annual retirement income. Her lead attorney, Richard Hampton, carried himself with the arrogance of someone who'd never lost a case involving blue-collar defendants. The smell of expensive cologne and legal desperation followed them to the front row like a toxic cloud. City Council Chairman Bob Mitchell called the meeting to order with the nervous energy of someone who knew he was about to witness either justice or a complete disaster. Hampton stood up like he was addressing the Supreme Court instead of a small-town council meeting, claiming his client had been the victim of a targeted harassment campaign by me, who had deliberately created dangerous obstacles on public thoroughfares to cause property damage and personal injury. The legal terminology sounded impressive until you realized it was complete nonsense wrapped in expensive vocabulary. Furthermore, Hampton continued, my so-called decorative barrier represented an attractive nuisance and public safety hazard that the city had a responsibility to remove immediately. Councilmember Sarah Gonzalez leaned forward with the expression of someone who'd actually read the case files, asking if Hampton was claiming that a decorative landscape feature installed 8 inches inside private property boundaries somehow constituted a public hazard. That's when Hampton made his fatal mistake, claiming the location of that obstacle was specifically calculated to cause maximum damage to vehicles using the established traffic pattern through the area. The courtroom-style murmur that rippled through the crowd was like thunder before lightning. Hampton had just admitted that Karen's established traffic pattern involved driving across my private property, that I stood up with the measured confidence of someone whose case was built on mathematical precision rather than legal theatrics, asking Chairman Mitchell if I could present evidence to the council. Attorney Sarah Kim had prepared a presentation that would have impressed NASA engineers, property surveys, security camera footage, municipal code citations, and a timeline of criminal activity that painted Karen's operation as systematic fraud disguised as neighborhood complaints.